Flick to link, link to flick.
In 1956, a documentary by Jacques Cousteau won both the Palme d'Or and an Oscar award. This film was called Le Monde du Silence, or The Silent World. And the premise of the title was that the underwater world was a quiet world. We now know, 60 years later, that the underwater world is anything but silent. Although the sounds are inaudible above water, depending upon where you are and the time of year, the underwater soundscape can be as noisy as any jungle or rainforest. Invertebrates like snapping shrimp, fish, and marine mammals all use sound. They use sound to study their habitat, to keep in communication with each other, to navigate, to detect predators and prey. And they also use sound by listening to know something about their environment. Take, for an example, the Arctic. It's considered a vast, inhospitable place, sometimes described as a desert, because it is so cold and so remote and ice-covered for much of the year. And despite this, there is no place on Earth that I would rather be than the Arctic, especially as days lengthen and spring comes. And to me, the Arctic really embodies this disconnect between what we see on the surface and what's going on underwater. You can look out across the ice, all white and blue and cold, and see nothing. But if you could hear underwater, the sounds you would hear would at first amaze and then delight you. And while your eyes are seeing nothing for kilometers but ice, your ears are telling you that out there are bowhead and beluga whales, walrus, and bearded seals. The ice too makes sounds. It screeches and cracks and pops and groans as it collides and rubs when temperature or currents or winds change. And under 100% sea ice, in the dead of winter, bowhead whales are singing. And you would never expect that, because we humans, we tend to be very visual animals. For most of us, but not all, our sense of sight is how we navigate our world. For marine mammals that live underwater, where chemical cues and light transmit poorly, sound is the sense by which they see. And sound transmits very well underwater, much better than it does in air. And so signals can be heard over great distances. And in the Arctic, this is especially important, because not only do Arctic marine mammals have to hear each other, but they also have to listen for cues in the environment that might indicate heavy ice ahead or open water. Remember, although they spend most of their lives underwater, they are mammals, and so they have to surface to breathe. So they might listen for thin ice or no ice, or listen for echoes off nearby ice. Arctic marine mammals live in a rich and varied underwater soundscape. In the spring, it can be a cacophony of sound. But when the ice is frozen solid, and there's no big temperature shifts or current changes, the underwater Arctic has some of the lowest ambient noise levels of the world's oceans. But this is changing. This is primarily due to a decrease in seasonal sea ice, which is a direct result of human greenhouse gas emissions. We are, in effect, with climate change, conducting a completely uncontrolled experiment with our planet. Over the past 30 years, areas of the Arctic have seen decreases in seasonal sea ice from anywhere from 6 weeks to 4 months. And this decrease in sea ice is sometimes referred to as an increase in the open water season. That is the time of year when the Arctic is navigable to vessels. And not only is the extent of ice changing, but the age and the width of ice is too. Now, you may well have heard that a decrease in seasonal sea ice is causing loss of habitat for animals that rely on sea ice, such as ice seals or walrus or polar bears. Decreasing sea ice is also causing increased erosion along coastal villages and changing prey availability for marine birds and mammals. Climate change and decreases in sea ice are also altering the underwater soundscape of the Arctic. Now, what do I mean by soundscape? Those of us who eavesdrop on the oceans for a living use instruments called hydrophones, which are underwater microphones, and we record ambient noise, the noise all around us. And the soundscape describes the different contributors to this noise field. And what we are hearing on our hydrophones are the very real sounds of climate change. And we are hearing these changes from three fronts: from the air, from the water, and from land. First, air. Wind on water creates waves. These waves make bubbles, the bubbles break. And when they do, they make noise. And this noise is like a hiss or a static in the background. Now, in the Arctic, when it's ice covered, most of the noise from wind doesn't make it into the water column because the ice acts as a buffer between the atmosphere and the water. And this is one of the reasons that the Arctic can have very low ambient noise levels. But with decreases in seasonal sea ice, not only is the Arctic now open to this wave noise, but the number of storms and the intensity of storms in the Arctic has been increasing. All of this is raising noise levels in a previously quiet ocean. Second, water. With less seasonal sea ice, subarctic species are moving north and taking advantage of the new habitat that is created by more open water. Now, Arctic whales, like this bowhead, they have no dorsal fin because they have evolved to live and swim in ice-covered waters. And having something sticking off of your back is not very conducive to migrating through ice, and may in fact be excluding animals from the ice. But now, everywhere we've listened, we're hearing the sounds of fin whales and humpback whales and killer whales further and further north and later in the season. We are hearing, in essence, an invasion of the Arctic by subarctic species. And we don't know what this means. Will there be competition for food between Arctic and subarctic animals? Might these subarctic species introduce diseases or parasites into the Arctic? And what are the new sounds that they are doing to the soundscape underwater? And third, land. And by land, I mean people. More open water means increased human use of the Arctic. Just this past summer, a massive cruise ship made its way through the Northwest Passage, the once mythical route between Europe and the Pacific. Decreases in sea ice have allowed humans to occupy the Arctic more often. It has allowed increases in oil and gas exploration and extraction, the potential for commercial shipping, as well as increased tourism. And we now know that ship noise increases levels of stress hormones in whales and can disrupt feeding behavior. Air guns, which produce loud, low-frequency whoops every 10 to 20 seconds, change the swimming and vocal behavior of whales. And all of these sound sources are decreasing the acoustic space over which Arctic marine mammals can communicate. Now, Arctic marine mammals are used to very high levels of noise at certain times of the year. But this is primarily from other animals or from sea ice. And these are the sounds with which they've evolved. And these are sounds that are vital to their very survival. These new sounds are loud and they're alien. And they might impact the environment in ways that we think we understand, but also in ways that we don't. Remember, sound is the most important sense for these animals, And not only is the physical habitat of the Arctic changing rapidly, but the acoustic habitat is too. It's as if we plucked these animals up from the quiet countryside and dropped them into a big city in the middle of rush hour. And they can't escape it. So what can we do now? We can't decrease wind speeds or keep subarctic animals from migrating north, but we can work on local solutions to reducing human-caused underwater noise. One of these solutions is to slow down ships that traverse the Arctic, because a slower ship is a quieter ship. We can restrict access in seasons and regions that are important for mating or feeding or migrating. We can get smarter about quieting ships and find better ways to explore the ocean bottom. And the good news is, there are people working on this right now. But ultimately, we humans have to do the hard work of reversing, or at the very least, decelerating human-caused atmospheric changes. So let's return to this idea of a silent world underwater. It's entirely possible that many of the whales swimming in the Arctic today, especially long-lived species like the bowhead whale, that the Inuit say can live 2 human lives. It's possible that these whales were alive in 1956 when Jacques Cousteau made his film. And in retrospect, considering all the noise we are creating in the oceans today, perhaps it really was the silent world. Thank you.
Flick to link, a link to flick. My photo taste is the Pinterest because they are the best.
From BBC Learning English. Hello and welcome to News Review, the programme where we show you how to use the language from the latest news stories in your everyday English. Hello, I'm Neil. Joining me today is Dan.
Hi everybody.
Okay, so what's our story?
Our story is about sexism in advertising.
Okay, sexism in advertising. Let's find out some more from this BBC Radio 4 news bulletin.
The Advertising Standards Authority has signalled its readiness to ban commercials which perpetuate sexist stereotypes. Examples given by the authority include ads which show women having sole responsibility for cleaning and men failing to carry out simple household tasks. The ASA's chief executive, Guy Parker, said portrayals which reinforced outdated views of gender roles can play a part in causing inequality.
So, the UK Advertising Standards Authority, which is the organisation that controls what you can and cannot show in an advert, is creating new rules about how men and women are shown in advertising. For example, if you have an advert that shows the woman doing all the cleaning. The ASA believe that these kind of ads keep gender inequality in society.
Okay, well, you've been looking at this story across the various news websites, and you've picked out 3 words that you think we need to be able to talk about this story and use in our everyday English.
I have indeed. The 3 words are watchdog, perpetuate, and unveil.
Watchdog, perpetuate, and unveil. So that first one, watchdog, what's the headline?
So the headline comes from the International Business Times and says, Watchdog pulls the plug on sexism in British adverts.
So, watchdog, meaning an organisation responsible for making sure people maintain standards and follow the law. Now, Dan, what dog? Dogs. What have dogs got to do with this?
Well, you and I'm sure many of our listeners will be familiar with a guard dog. That would be a dog that keeps the house safe from burglars. Now, in American English, guard dog is synonymous with watchdog, and they use the two interchangeably. So, like a guard dog, which keeps your house safe, a watchdog is a person or organisation that keeps an eye on things and checks that people are following the rules. But there's no actual dog.
There's no animal.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, and this word is not the official word, is it? So the organisation or the agency or whatever is not called watchdog is something that's used in the media to describe that kind of function.
Absolutely. The word is a function. It's not the name of the company itself. The companies will have different names, something standards authority, standards agency, whatever, but it will be referred to by people as a watchdog.
Yeah.
We actually have a watchdog on our team.
Yeah.
We before we put any content out online, it is checked by our duty producer. They are the watchdog for the day, so they check the spelling, the grammar, and they make sure that everything's correct before we send it out online.
Yeah, and they have a nasty bite.
They do indeed.
Okay, let's have a look at our second headline.
Our second headline comes from Malay Mail Online and says, ads that perpetuate sexist stereotypes to be banned in the UK.
Perpetuate, make continue.
That's right. Now, this is a Latin-rooted word, and the original translation is lasting. And because it's a Latin-rooted word, it exists in Latin languages, Spanish, French, Italian, and Portuguese. But, more interestingly, because it's a Latin word, it therefore is slightly more formal in English. The regular word would be to keep going or to maintain. And what I really like about this is it has a beautiful word family. So the verb is to perpetuate. The adjective is perpetual, for example, perpetual love or perpetual motion. And the noun phrase is in perpetuity. Now notice the pronunciation difference. Perpetuate, perpetual, in perpetuity. So, for example, when you promise to marry someone, you might promise to love, honour and obey them in perpetuity. However, the man on the street is unlikely to walk around saying in perpetuity for everything. It's a bit ridiculous. So they might use
Forever, everlasting.
yeah, and things of that nature. Exactly.
Okay, let's have a look at our final headline.
Our final headline comes from The Guardian and says, Standards Body unveils plan to crack down on sexist advertisements.
Unveil, make known for the first time.
Exactly. Now, oh no, please, after you.
Okay, so this word, again, has got an element which it could be slightly confusing. Veil.
That's right.
Now, I thought a veil was some kind of, cover or curtain.
Well, you're exactly right, it is. And the first part, being un, is the prefix, which means not. So, not cover or uncover. So, like a magician or an inventor, they would physically reveal the thing that they want to show to people, so they would uncover it. However, these days, especially in newspapers, it's used as more of a metaphor, and it means to formally show something for the first time. For example, a building or a footballer.
Yes, you often hear whatever club, let's say Real Madrid, they have a new superstar player and they are unveiled. It doesn't mean the player is standing behind a curtain and they pull it open and suddenly the player is there. It means they're being introduced.
Exactly. So, the physical one would be reveal or uncover, and the metaphorical synonym would be to introduce.
Okay, well, before we recap the vocabulary, of course, we have our Facebook challenge. We asked the following question. Old-fashioned sexist ads are to be banned in the UK. Which of these words is not a synonym of old-fashioned? Is it A, archaic, B, outdated, or C, time-honoured? And how was the response?
Well, I'm looking at an overwhelming number of C's, so well done, that is the correct answer. And well done to Chon Teacher for explaining. C is correct because choice B and A have negative meanings, but C has a positive meaning. Well done, Chon Teacher, and everybody else on the page. But I'd like to also say quickly to Towhead, thank you very much, Towhead. I really liked what you wrote. I hope I get a wife like her, so strong, referring to the picture that we put with the post of the lady lifting a couch while doing the hoovering. Fantastic.
Okay, Dan, quickly now just recap the vocabulary.
Certainly. So, first of all, we had watchdog, organisation responsible for making sure people maintain standards and follow the law. Then we had perpetuate, to make continue. And finally, unveil, make known for the first time.
If you would like to test yourself on today's vocabulary, there's a quiz you can take on our website, bbclearningenglish.com, where you can find all kinds of other activities and videos to help you improve your English. Thanks for joining us and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
News Review. from BBC Learning English.
This is a download from BBC Learning English. To find out more, visit our website.
Welcome back to English at University, the series that teaches some English phrases to help you through your first year of study abroad. Mary's finally found her way to the university, no thanks to new student Daniel. She's managed to find her way to the accommodation block and is looking for her new room. It's exciting, isn't it, Mary?
Well, I'm at my room, room 101, but the door's already open.
Well, you'd better go in. Good luck.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I thought this was my room, room 101.
Yeah, it's room 101, and you must be my new roommate. We share rooms here. I'm Abby, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. But I didn't realize I was sharing a room.
Oh, don't worry, I won't bite. We'll have a blast.
A blast?
A laugh, a party, an amazing time. I've been here 3 years. It's great. Loads of fit guys, parties.
And studying?
What's that? Listen, don't mind my mess. I tend to dry my washing on the windowsill. That's when I actually wash it. Sorry about the clothes on the floor. And all that stuff on the desk is mine. I'm sure you won't be needing the desk anyway.
Well,
Mary, this place is a tip. That means it's really messy. It's time you put your foot down. It's your room too, and she'll have to compromise. You'll have to ask her to tidy up and set some ground rules. You know, the basic rules of how something should be done.
Oh, okay. Abby, it's great that we're going to be roommates. But could we set some ground rules, please? Would you mind keeping the room a bit more tidy? It would be a great help if I could have some space on the desk to put my things. And, maybe you could keep your things on your side of the room, and I'll look after this side. Would that be a reasonable compromise?
Oh, well, I suppose so.
Well done, Mary. This place looks like a bomb's gone off. It's really untidy. And if you don't say what you want, then you won't get it. Even though you're the new girl, Abby will hopefully see that you're not to be messed with. Here are those phrases again. Could we set some ground rules, please? Would you mind keeping the room a bit more tidy? It would be great if I could have some space on the desk to put my things. Would that be a reasonable compromise? Visit bbclearningenglish.com to practice these phrases and learn more about student accommodation in the UK. Now, has Abby agreed to tidy up this pigsty, this horrible messy room?
Well, Mary, you're a bit bossy, but I think we're going to get on very well.
Anyone at home?
Oh no, not him.
Hi, Mary. I found out that this was your room.
Hey, Mary, who's this loser? Stick with me and I'll introduce you to lots of guys at Freshers Week.
Flick to link, I'll link to flick.